Hello YouTube, my name's Sean Connors and this is Outsiders, and today's DM's Tips we're going to talk about pacing. Now we've really been getting into some more nitty gritty stuff, and we were talking about tonality, the ability to ham it up. We've been looking at various aspects where we're really putting some fundamentals on top of just running a game. And this is probably one of those skills that is very difficult to acquire, and I think only comes over time. A lot of people talk about this, DMs talk about it a lot, but never really tell you really what it is. So I'm going to attempt to do that in a very, very short video, so hopefully I do. Effectively, what pacing is, it's a bit like when you're reading a book and you come up to a good bit that you really like, and you think, that's fantastic, and then you start reading beyond that piece, and then it begins to slow up again. And you just get into a point where you think, oh, I'm going to put it down now, I've read enough today, and then it picks back up again. Pacing is that, it's the various movements in your story. You can't always run high octane, and it has to be downtime. So effectively, what it is, it's about knowing how to pace a story. And the reason pacing is critical is that you want to leave the game on a high. You know, that sounds obvious really, but your game should always end, in my view, on a high. I don't believe role-playing, I have heard somebody say this and try to do it, and it never works. Some people try to leave games on a cliffhanger, like they do in TV series. It doesn't really transpire very well for role-playing games, because things happen, people can't make the next session, and so on and so on and so on. It just never works. So I would say, end on a high. And what I've found, and this is purely from experience, is that it really adds so much more excitement to the game, because the players finish that particular point, they're all on a buzz, we're all talking about it, it's a great way to leave the game. But you've got to get the story to that point, and that is the pacing side of the game. So you've got to be mindful of time. It's time management really as a DM. So think about how long you've got. So if you've got 3 or 4 hour sessions, I mean, I run, sort of 7-8 hour sessions or more, and sometimes we do weekends. So we're used to running long games, and without getting into it, I know I can run for quite some period of time without needing to stop. So you've got to know what you've got ahead of you, and my average session is 7 to 8 hours. Yours could be a lot less, 3 or 4. If you've only got 3 or 4 hours, you've got to start thinking about all the elements of your game. Now, all of us have a preamble, which is at the beginning of my games. There's about 20 minutes, half hour of sort of general chit chat before we bring the game to a start, and that is important in my game because it gets players excited about what's coming up. We're able to natter about all sorts of things, have a laugh about some of the past experiences and things like that. Gets players comfortable, and then we can start the game up. Now, if you've only got 3 or 4 hours, the preamble is probably that's valuable time, so you might have to cut, really shorten that down to a couple of minutes. Get the preamble out of the way and quickly move into setting up the session for that day. You set the session up and then you step back, but you've got to be mindful of how to pace it. So you've got to be really clock watching. It sounds horrible really, but it's one of the things you have to do until you get used to it. So you've got to know when to start building up towards the bigger piece and how to bring it there. And this is going to sound very odd, DMs. This is going to sound really odd. Okay, so really bear with me on this, and please ask questions about this bit. Sometimes you might have to sacrifice a part of your story to reach a point near the end of the night which can save a tiny bit of time but allows the players to focus on a really important bit, because that's just the way it is. And experienced DMs will tell you that sometimes the players will come up with better ideas than you, or as good an idea, and sometimes they go with it. Instinctively, they ad-lib and they run with it. That's where pacing can really come into its own. So let's recap very quickly. Sorry to ramble on a little bit here. Pacing, effectively, is the management of your game. It's the time management to bring the story over the course of your night to a really good end. Normally the best ends are things where it could be an investigative sort of side, where really, you've found out who's done it. You may have even captured them, great, or a massive fight, and hopefully the players have triumphed, and it's just at the end of that, bring the session to a close. Great way to end, and let them have a little bit of downtime. That's what pacing is all about, and it's so important, because there's nothing worse than games ending on parts which are really boring. Because to be honest with you, it may not seem obvious to some, it is obvious to many, but the game needs to end on a high, because that's one of the reasons why people come back. That's the bit they remember. I always say it's last impressions count in RPGs, not first. So remember that, use it. Pacing is critical to your games. Start thinking about the way you finish your sessions. Anyway, I've been Sean Connors. This has been DM's Tips. Till next time, take care. Bye-bye.